when all is said and done, assuming they don't make a playoff run here, he's going to end up being the story of this season. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner Patrick Mooney, who is at Wrigley Field right now after Shota Imanaga threw 7 no-hit innings, capped off by Nate Pearson and Porter Hodge for the Cubs' second combined no-hitter in the past 3 or 4 years, and their 6th no-hitter in the past 15 years, 16 years. I mean, just after not seeing one since the 70s, this team is suddenly no-hitter happy. Patrick, what was the scene like at Wrigley Field tonight?
It was, I think it really encapsulated this season in a lot of ways of you kind of count this team out and switch into the mode of, I'll be honest, that my Google Doc had the words, Cubs toast in it and today's date, because that honestly was the vibe or my expectation kind of walking in today. They just lost two tough games to a last place team. They put arguably their best pitcher on the injured list in Justin Steele, as well as Jorge Lopez, a top reliever. And you're just, their playoff odds were, according to Fangraphs, about 1.7. And then Shota Imanaga goes out and just does his thing. And even that was not totally clean either. You have Craig Counsell making the decision to pull him. So the on-field scene wasn't, and maybe we were spoiled by Jake Arrieta at Dodger Stadium with his journey and the onesie with mustaches all over it. This was kind of really a bunch of dudes who had no idea the no-hitter was going on. That to me was one of the funniest parts of the post-game press conference. Of Shota didn't know, catcher Miguel Amaya didn't know, or didn't until a smaller crowd, 30,000 plus, started booing. Nate Pearson, the reliever, came in, did not know. But once people started booing, he felt like he had an idea that something was on the line. And even Porter Hodge, who closed out the game, said he looked at the TV in the bullpen right around the same time Pearson did. But of course, he didn't want to say anything to jinx it. And Pearson just kind of kept going. So Hodge just laughed. It was yeah, that dude has no idea what's going on. So just a perfectly perfectly enjoyable Cubby occurrence, I would say, of just you never know what's going to happen when you walk into Wrigley Field.
Yeah, it was funny watching from home. You see Jack Neely warming up in
that too.
After the second inning. And
yes.
It turns out we hear about it afterwards in the post game that Counsell said he got there late and just kind of needed to throw. But it was kind of funny. You're thinking oh man, this season just went to hell quickly. If Shota is coming out after 2 innings, he did. I think he walked 2 guys in that inning, or at least had 2 long at bats in that inning. And he doesn't walk anyone, so it was a little odd. Obviously, he was fine and he pitched brilliantly. And I think when all is said and done, assuming they don't make a playoff run here, he's going to end up being the story of this season, right? As far as the positive stories, Shota has nearly cemented that. We've talked about it on and off throughout this podcast, but Shota's just such a bright spot, a home run signing for this front office, and just kind of an anchor for the next few years when you look at this rotation. Just such a it's beyond him just pitching well. Every single time I watch him go out there, every single time I listen to him speak afterwards, he's got this presence about him that makes it has to make Craig Counsell feel comfortable when he takes them out.
Without a doubt. And I was the one who asked that Neely question because I looked at our buddy Jordan Bastian when they announced Jack Neely is warming up in the bullpen. And we're just like, really? And I'm preparing the tweet to be like, Shota Imanaga exits the game. But obviously he was a late arrival, the guy who was replacing Steele on the roster. And I don't know, I just wanted to like, triple check, like, and Counsell was like, huh, you guys like notice that? It's like, well, yeah, it feels like this season, is kind of on the brink here. But to your point, when you have Shota, it just gives you a chance. I think the Cubs are now 20-6 in its starts, which is pretty amazing. And you and I had done a lot of homework and digging into, like, along with our colleague Ken Rosenthal, of like what other teams saw and kind of their expectations. And, part of it was, can that carry on his fastball carry all the way through? And here we are after Labor Day, and he still is that anchor. He still, just keeps giving them a chance, and really just kind of a model teammate, someone just the staff trusts implicitly, and someone who's just really curious, engaged, and experienced, that he's constantly, and that's kind of what I asked Counsell as well, because I had to recover after asking what he probably thought was like a dumbass question. But I was like, all right, well, you always talk about making adjustments, competing in the moment. What does that say that he's going through this and has no idea there's 0 hits on the board? And he got that point of just like, he's always thinking about the next pitch, the sequence, how to, set up this hitter, how to navigate the next part of the lineup. And it came together on just kind of one of those weird out of left field days that you get around this team.
Pop quiz, AJ. What's America's #1 meal kit?
That would be HelloFresh, Scott, and it even works for picky eaters like you. There's an ever-changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week. So just select your meals and delivery date, and voila!
Home-cooked meals just hit different.
Agreed. With FT every day and my coaching job, I don't have time to search recipes all night, and also spending money on a whole jar of spices for only a pinch? Nah, I'm good. My family gets more of me because I don't have to take a last-minute trip to the grocery store at night to find dinner.
Ready for this? For free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/free FT. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/FREEFT.
Imanaga is at 2.99 ERA now. I don't know if he's probably gets some down ballot Cy Young Award votes if he ends strong here, because he's gonna have the innings, he's gonna have the starts. It's not like he's short on any of that. He does everything well, and that's the 5th best ERA right now in baseball. I was high on him coming in. I did not expect this. So he's been standout brilliant. The Cubs season right now is just so odd to try and analyze. That loss on Monday, I think, is the big one. You can kind of you lose to Paul Skeens, couldn't get the big hit when you needed it. That happens, but that loss on Monday stings now when you have this win, and you kind of look at how hot Atlanta is and how hot the Mets are. But we can save the playoff chase for another day.
Don't be the buzzkill, man. Don't be all doom and gloom, right?
I think there is. I think we saw. So Jorge Lopez is the other guy going on the IL, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting in the sense that we saw one of the guys that's going to have to step up and kind of eat some of those innings that Jorge Lopez was, and Nate Pearson, who's been really good lately. And if he attacks and doesn't walk guys, there's a reason Counsell likes Jorge Lopez in those big moments, and it's because he trusts him not to walk guys, right? We talked about this, but like those are 2 bloops that he gave up before a 3-run homer to Brian Reynolds. Those essentially serve as walks, right? Like he got the contact that he wanted to, but like Counsell's wants to avoid a situation where men are getting on base and then the big hit happens, right? If Pearson can limit the walks and occasionally he's giving up a solo home run, I think Counsell actually is fine with that. It's not going to work in a 1-run game, but if he's limiting base runners and if the big issue is that occasional homer, I think they can survive that. He and who's the other guy I was thinking is going to have to step up now? I've forgotten who it is. But Pearson was the main guy. I was thinking like this guy needs to step up with Lopez down, and he looked good yet again.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring up the bullpen, because this was like a team effort, and I do think it's interesting, like those two guys closing it out, I think kind of shows a lot about this bullpen, right? Of Pearson, who was a first-round pick, a high prospect, but ultimately a disappointment with the Blue Jays, and a guy that they targeted in that, for them, a sort of unconventional trade deadline deal, though it's very much in their change of scenery wheelhouse here. And Porter Hodge, someone who Counsell had said was not on the Major League radar in spring training. I mean, you had written about him and sort of mentioned him as like a guy to watch, but I certainly didn't see him really coming on the scene the way he did this season. And I think it kind of gets to like why this Cubs team has hung around. Like, they don't raise banners for trying. But there is something to like just sticking with it. And I think that's what this group has done. And the group has changed over these last several months here, to where the bullpen has weathered a lot and become a strength. And look, like, I mean, pitching with an 11-run, 12-run lead is easier, but there is a lot of pressure to get those last 6 outs, right? And
yeah,
it is kind of funny just seeing them, in the interview room afterwards, a little bit of obliviousness, some like giddiness, just all of that coming together for two guys who, knock on wood, could be like big part of this team, not just this year, but next year. And if they stay healthy, could really like kind of grow into whatever the Cubs are going to become.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but this game, I guess, featured a lot of like, if you want to be optimistic for beyond 2024, this game featured that, Shota, the two relievers we just talked about, and PCA having another big game. We're going to have to spend more time on him.
Miguel
Amaya, the catcher there. And that matters. I know it's hard to, measure that, but when guys catch a no-hitter, I think that means a lot to them, and it means a lot to the coaching staff, and it's a big deal, and he's developing a lot back there. The offense has come around. Obviously, we've talked a lot about that, but he gets a lot of praise for that. The staff appreciates the work he puts in, the time he spends to get better and make them better. He deserves a lot of props for kind of pushing this staff and getting the most out of them, because as he works to get better himself behind the plate. So it's a nice story right now after those two losses. This team, impossible to try and predict what's going to happen next. 3 with the Yankees. We'll talk about that next time we record, Patrick. But it's just, like, I'm not putting anything past this team right now, because I don't know what to expect. I certainly didn't expect them to answer these 2 disappointing losses with a no-hitter.
Yeah, I think one thing to add on Amaya, just from observation, it seemed like in the moment on the field after the game, and even in the interview room, I think it might have meant the most to him, or at least he was the most emotional. I mean, he's been around this team, this organization, the longest. He's had a hard road to get here in terms of coming back from injuries and a really steep learning curve at a difficult position behind the plate. And, we were writing it that, he was part of, like the worst catching setup in baseball at one point. And this season, and it's pretty amazing what he's done offensively, the adjustments he's made in season. I think we both would agree, or were told, like part of his kind of offensive cratering early was because he cares so much about the catching side and his defensive responsibilities that it's hard to, there's only so much time in a day. There's only so much energy and bandwidth you have. And he poured it all into defense. And, I think the pitchers trust him. They certainly noticed that. And, for a guy who's worked a long time, it was kind of nice to see him sort of smile. And they took this nice photo. I guess the interview room sequence was Counsell walks in and he's like, he had this like sheepish look on his face. Like, all right, like have at it. Like he knew he was going to be asked about why he pulled Shota. And then, Shota comes in with his interpreter and does something. And then after that, you get Amaya and the two relievers and then Shota, and they did a nice photo. And, they had a ball, I'm assuming from the last out, and someone asked what they were going to do with it. And Amaya's like, it's going to the Hall of Fame. And so I think that really, summed up for him. You never know, when you're going to get these type of moments. You have to appreciate it. They got an off day, and then it's going to get hard. And we'll go with the Yankees and a road trip to Dodger Stadium and Coors Field, but there's plenty of time for us to get into that later. Just really kind of a mind-bending night at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and I think it's a sign of the times. We don't need to dive into this right now, but I think it is a sign of the times that we've barely talked about that Counsell pulled Shota. I didn't give it a second thought. I thought it was the right move. It makes sense for his career, makes sense for the season, makes sense for 1,000 different reasons. There's going to be fans that disagree. I just disagree with that. That's like I'm not going to spend much time on it because I just think it was the right move. Like you got to think about the guy in his career, and Counsell absolutely is the type to do that as well. He's not going to overthink those situations. And just watching the post game, I don't think Shota was like broken hearted.
Yeah. If he doesn't get fired up about it, it's hard for us to like press him on it, in another language. And they do still have something to play for here, like it's not, no one knows how it's going to end here. It's unlikely that they keep playing into October, but like clearly you have to keep that in mind that he has to carry a rotation that, won't have Justin Steele for a couple of turns. And like you were saying, Sahadev, this is like an absolute building block guy, a marquee attraction, and someone who's really exceeded so many expectations here that you just don't want to mess with that.
All right, let's wrap it up here, Patrick. Thanks so much for everyone listening to Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic. You can read Patrick's piece on the no-hitter, and we'll be at it all weekend against the Yankees. Patrick will be on the West Coast trip to Denver and LA. Thanks so much for listening. Patrick, thanks for the dispatch from out at Wrigley. Fun night at Wrigley and long night for you, obviously, writing as well. So thanks for coming. Thanks for putting this together and making sure we recorded. Thanks, everyone. Take care.